Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. Folks, today we have a 2008 Toyota Highlander. Now, dealerships typically get a bad reputation, even some automotive repair shops. And in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly why they do that to themselves. But it's just the way they do things is how they gain that beautiful reputation that actually ruins it for everybody that does good work and tries their best to be as honest, transparent, and professional as possible. The owner of this car bought this car used from a dealership that have maintained this car its entire life, which is okay. And then they tried to take it to a few shops and dealerships because they could never get straight answers. Let me read to you. This is a copy of the email that this viewer sent me, and the owner of this car. So this car was bought at the original selling dealership that sold this car to the original owner. That same dealership maintained this car all its life, and then he bought it from them because the original owner traded it in. Then, very shortly after that, the oil cooler line exploded, which is rubber, very known. There is not a single Toyota technician on the planet that does not know about this problem. You see that rubber line, you recommend replacement. It was never replaced. The car had almost 120,000 miles. Now it has 137,000. The line ruptured. The owner took this car to a independent shop. They replaced the line. They did 120,000 mile service. When you do 120,000 mile service, you're supposed to check the entire car. The customer at the time had a concern with a steering pop. When you turn the wheel, it makes a popping noise. Very known problem with these for the intermediate shaft. This shop says, found nothing causing the steering popping noise. The customer is just hearing things. That's the first problem. You did a full service. You replaced the line. You did all this work to this car, but you could not identify the source of the popping noise. That's okay. Then come the dealership. Now this is another local dealership here, actually very close to my house. They did an alignment because the customer have just bought tires, and they said found nothing causing the steering popping noise. The independent shop, maybe they're not specialists, maybe they didn't know about this, but this is a dealership now. Found nothing. And then starts the headlight hiatus. The customer says the headlight burns continuously. 6 months, only the driver's side headlight bulb burns over and over and over. The dealership says replaced driver's side headlight bulb with a $30 part cost. Driver's side headlight burns out are common. They blame the other dealership that originally sold the car. Well, the blame game doesn't do anything. The owner wants their car fixed. They don't want the blame game. That's okay. They didn't fix it. Then come another dealership, because at this point the customer looked at this dealership and was like, you guys are being like clowns. You're not fixing my problems. You're just blaming other people. So come another dealership. This dealership ignored everything that the customer said, only told him, you have a major oil leak from the rear main seal. This is a life or death matter. You have to fix it. They made a giant deal about it. There's no oil leak unless it's like the oil cooler line that's leaking. That is that serious. That's okay. The customer got upset with all these dealerships, took it to an independent shop, another one. This independent shop is actually 15 minutes from my house. They work on vintage muscle cars. Hardly the specialist or the expert in newer models, let alone Toyota. But cars are cars. And here's what this shop did. They discovered that the steering popping noise was the middle steering shaft or intermediate steering shaft that had a TSB or a campaign. Well, it's not a campaign, it's a TSB. And no work was done on the steering shaft since it was not deemed a safety issue. Thank you for being honest for the first time. All these other guys could not find it. This is the first person that is honest, that says, hey, we see the problem. Yes, it is an intermediate shaft, but by the way, it's not a safety issue. It's more of a bother, which is correct. But then here's where things continue. They removed the splash shield to inspect for a large oil leak. According to the previous dealer, they found a slight oil seep between the engine and transmission and no oil on the garage floor. Let's keep an eye on it. Now the customer is completely confused. Who do I trust? Do I trust the dealership, or do I trust the independent mechanic, or are they all just incorrect? I don't blame him. Then they proceeded to replace the driver's side bulb again, clean headlight connector, aimed the headlights. Well, you don't really need to aim the headlight when you replace a bulb, but whatever the case. Again, we go back to the same thing, because the customer brought this car in. When he emailed me, he said the bulb went out again. Back to square one. But here's what I love about this. Replace serpentine belt. This is the independent shop. Replace serpentine belt, idler pulley, automatic belt tensioner, clean the throttle body, installed mass airflow sensor service kit. Okay. And induction service kit. So I'm assuming they cleaned the mass airflow, which we're going to look at in a second. I mean, all this stuff. And the customer brought me this car. They want a full inspection, and they have questions about the condition of the car. How is the rust? How is the suspension? How's everything going on? I mean, all of these shops, they didn't look at this. They didn't give this information to the customer. They just kept assigning blame. This is how dealerships get a bad name. Sorry for the long intro and the rant. Let's check this car out, and we'll actually give the customer a full image of what's going on. Let's start from the beginning, because one of the concerns of the customer, surprisingly, all these dealerships never told him anything about. You hear that noise? That is from the door check. So let's look at that. One thing that is very common in these is the door check. But before you recommend a door check, check these nuts if they are loose or not. And these are not loose. So this needs a door check. It's very simple. Not a safety concern, not an issue. It's an annoyance. If the customer this bothers him, of course, it would, because every time you open the door, it sounds like an old hoopty. But this car is actually extremely clean. Just look at this interior. Look how clean this interior is. Very well maintained, very well taken care of. I mean, the interior is pristine. Look at this carpet. You know, in the salty land, and this car originally came from Ohio, this is very clean carpet. And the dash, everything is very clean. Really like the first impressions of this car. Looks like a car that was taken care of. Let's look at the miles. 137, 428. That's actually nothing for these. These are very common to go over 200,000 miles. Well, let's start our inspection. Let's look under the hood. All right. Well, we have the beautiful 2GR FE. Let's pull the engine cover off. All the grommets are there. Nothing is broken here. That is really nice. Let's do a quick inspection overall. The customer did tell me that he had the brakes done recently, which I can see. Brake fluid's over max. Somebody topped it off at some point. That's why it's over max. Not a big issue. Toyota True Start battery, we'll get that tested. Looking at everything here, I don't see anything standing out immediately. Let's look at this mount. The dog bone mount looks good. I don't see any tears or issues. There's no nest here. The oil line for the BBT is metal on these, and the oil cooler line is very hard to see from here, but you can see the edge of it. It is metal. I can see some shiny idler and tensioner pulley. I actually am curious to see if they actually replace the whole tensioner, because I'm looking at the bolts for the alternator. Doesn't look like anybody's touched that ever. And in order to replace the whole tensioner, you actually have to remove the alternator. So I wonder if they replace the whole tensioner or just the pulley. Radiator is good. I don't see any leaks here. Actually, I take that back. we might have a small radiator leak here. See the pink crust right there? Very, very small. Because I noticed the coolant is low, and this car is warm and it's a little low. We're going to continue to investigate. Let's look at the headlight here. So the first thing I see is, this is very, very not nice. See this? Like, what is this? This is not original. And then the connector. I'm going to pop this connector out so you can see it. I already inspected this. I know what's going on, but so you can see it. That is really not good. This is very loose. It's an aftermarket connector. I have corrosion here, and I have a melted connector. Do you see that melted part right there? This is why this bulb keeps burning. You have bad contact. I mean, any of these shops would have seen this. I don't know who replaced this connector, but whoever did it put the cheapest one possible and put this little Mickey Mouse cover on top of it. This is what I call, Mr. Karkiran's laughing at it, this is what I call Mickey Mouse car repair. Because if we look on the other side, on the other headlight right here, this is the original connector. This is the original connector. Looks nothing like that. The back of it is sealed and it looks dry as rain. This, Mickey Mouse repair, no good. That's going to need to be replaced and that'll solve the headlight issues. Another thing that I usually check is, do we have moisture in the headlight? And I did ask the customer. They did say they have a little bit of moisture. Looking at the headlight, I don't see a lot of staining and, you know, signs of a lot of moisture. So I don't think that has to do with it. I think our beautiful connector here has to do a lot with it. So took us 5 minutes to realize that this thing is melted and it's rusty and corroded and not good. Not very difficult now. Let's lift this car up and look underneath it to see the massive oil leak from the rear main seal or the small seepage from the rear main seal. I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, so let's start our inspection with the first problem. Remember that one shop that replaced the automatic belt tensioner, like it's a 1955 Chevy? Let's look at the tensioner. I'm going to point it in the editing here. Pulley is new, we know that fact, because you can see it right here. But that tensioner looks like it has 2008 written all over it. So they just replaced the pulley. I hope they didn't charge this customer to replace the tensioner and it's just the pulley. Benefit of the doubt here, but it's not looking good. Then, control arm bushing has a few tears in it. Nothing that I am concerned about, but we will note it to the customer because it's, again, their car, not my car. Sway bar bushing is good. Rust-wise, there's a little bit of rust on this strut, but nothing excessive. Nothing where it's peeling and falling apart where it could be a concern. Brakes are new. I can tell, he did tell me that these were replaced recently. They look newer. So the rotor as well. I think this rotor might have been replaced. But let's go and look at the life-threatening oil leak, which the first one is the front timing cover. And it's not exactly what I call a massive oil leak. I mean, it's definitely an oil leak. It's not going to stop on its own, but it's not massive. You see it right there? That's a classic front timing cover leaking on the 2GR, but not excessive. Let's look underneath it and we'll see the rest. If you remember that 200,000 mile Camry we looked at, it was all covered with oil here. That was a leak where I would say, okay, well, that needs to be fixed. But I don't even have oil at the bottom of the oil pan. You just have a little bit at the top. Of course, it is a leak. We're going to have to tell the customer, hey, your front cover is starting to leak. My recommendation would be wait longer, or if you want to do it, it's again, it's your car, your money, your decision. But then the rear main seal. I mean, are we really being serious right now? Because this is, I wouldn't even call this a seep. This is like very, very minor. Look at this. This is not even a leak. This is like a smudge. I am not even concerned about this at all. And the transmission, we have no leaks. By the way, I did remove a big cover that was here. I'll show you that because we have something on that. But I did want to look at the bottom of the radiator. Hoping you can see it right there. I don't see any leaks on it. So it's just that little bit at the top. We're going to keep an eye on that. But otherwise, transmission has no leaks. Transfer case has no leaks. I wouldn't call this a leak. It's like a tiny little, not even a seepage in the front here. But rust-wise, this is very typical. It's a cast iron transfer case, so it's going to look a little rusty. That's normal. Subframe does have a little bit of rust. All surface, just a little bit here where it's starting to get a little rusty land, but that's typical for these. This is, again, not a new car. Something that is common in these Highlanders are leaks from here. It actually goes through the drive shaft and leaks through the yoke. This one is not leaking, so that's good. Going back, hard to do this with one hand, but I'm gonna kind of check the U-joints. They're also somewhat common. They're good. I'll check the rest of them off camera. It's really hard to hold the camera and do this and hold the light at the same time. But the rust levels on this car, I mean, this car is covered underneath, so it's not as susceptible. We do have a little bit in the back there, but nothing excessive. And the exhaust is okay. This typical rust on the exhaust. These clamps are notorious to, see if I can do this at the same time. This one is about, actually it's gone. So we're gonna wanna replace this clamp because otherwise this whole thing will start rattle. Same thing with this one. No, this one is good. And that one is good as well. So this is typical, again, very common problem with this. But I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this leak. That's not a leak, folks. You have this, clean it, and you won't see it for a long time. Front cover is leaking, but it's not as bad. This is, you know, when you get all the way over the subframe, that's when I'd call it bad, but this is not. Let's go take a quick peek at the back and we'll continue. Let's look at the back here, and for some, this will be extremely rusty, but that is very normal for the age of this car in this area. Here's the differential. I don't have any leaks. They were not as common for leaks, but we've seen some of them leak, axle seals and whatnot. This one is completely dry. Nothing really stands out in the suspension. Yes, it does look rusty, but again, that is normal. Here's a spare tire. I don't see anything of concern. There's one thing I want to show you. You see a little bit of rust forming there on the body, and looky what we have. The body plug is missing. That's, see, this is that original selling dealer. Where is your body plug that you're supposed to install when you sold this car? That side is missing as well. This is not good. This is how dealerships, you see all that rust around it? That's all from that missing plug. That's really the biggest rust on the body itself. Otherwise, the body is like completely covered, so you don't really have big rust spots on it. And this is that shield underneath the car. This door, where the oil filter is, there's a small cover here with 2 bolts. It's missing. I don't know at what point this has gone missing, but it is missing. Not the end of the world. And these 2 bolts are broken. They're notorious to seize and break. Very simple to fix, but you know, we'll bring it to the customer's attention. I mean, there's enough bolts to hold this shield on, but still, I want to give them the full picture of this car. One more concern that the owner of this beautiful 2008 Highlander had was the rear wiper. Something very common with these. I mean, you notice how it's sitting. It's already not sitting right. Let's observe what the wiper does. I will go turn it on. You look at the wiper. Did you see that? This is a very, very common problem with these. It's just like a lazy wiper. Most people will look at this and run to buy a motor. Oh, the motor is just dead and it's that. But watch this. The Highlander, in case you didn't know this, if you push this button, this glass actually opens. And the way this works is the motor is actually here, right here, And then there's this little arm that when you close the glass, it connects here. So now I'm gonna go to the car and turn on the wipers. I want you to watch the motor, what it does. Is working perfectly fine. So the problem is, I'm not going to close this glass all the way, because actually that's the resting position of this motor when the car is off, so this should be more like this. But when I turn this, I'm putting a lot of force into this to move it. What happens with these is, this mechanism right here that just connects this part of the wiper into the motor seizes with rust. And now the motor doesn't have enough force to move this. I mean, I am putting serious force here, folks. At some point, if you're ever doing this to your car, gotta be careful because you could snap the glass or break the wiper. This is completely seized. So, this is one of, Toyota technicians know about this. This is one of the scariest jobs to do because everything is seized here. Behind the wiper arm, there's a 24mm nut right here that never comes off, and you put force into it, you're forcing the glass and you just snap it in half, and now all the glass is in your face. Very dangerous job. So what we found with this is you gotta cut this little piece of metal right here. You gotta literally cut it to open it, and then everything just comes off. Very dangerous because now you're cutting right next to the glass. Very dangerous job, but very common one. I've done a lot of these. This is just the way it is. But if you ever have this, don't run and buy a motor. It's always this arm. I don't think I've ever replaced a motor on a Highlander. It's always this mechanism right here. And then sometimes the wiper arm never comes off. I mean, if you look how rusty this is, just look how rusty this thing is. Sometimes you take this off and you can't get the wiper off, so you need a puller. It turns into a little mess, but that's Highlander land for you. This is a very common problem with these. One last thing we're going to look at is the sunroof drain, because there's also something Highlander special with this. So the owner also asked me about the sunroof drains. There's something notorious with these Highlanders. The sunroof drains come down all the way here, and then they stop at the kick panel. There's like a little funnel underneath. This is where the drain comes, and there's a funnel and a very small opening, and that's where the water drains. Don't know why this hose doesn't go all the way out like most other models. This is the only model that has this, and I've seen so many Highlanders flood with water, not because the sunroof drain itself is clogged, it's because that little funnel is clogged. So we're going to take a look at it real quick, and if you own one of these, you have to do this. This is super important. Nothing else floods these cars more than this little funnel thing. So let's pop the little panel here. And we're going to pop this panel as well. There we go. This is going to be extremely hard to see. I can use a mirror, but I'm going to actually use my inspection camera here to show you. I'll put that, you just got to pop this electrical box here. Thank you. You're just going to pop this enough just to get your camera in there. There we go. So there's a little bit of mud there. Do you see it in this picture? In this video right here? But the hole, which is right there, it's open. There's not a lot of stuff collected. Sometimes you'll see this and it'll have mud all over it and leaves. Do you see where the drain comes in? Do you see how clean that funnel is? Sometimes you'll have that all plugged up with stuff. There is one on the driver's side and there is one on the passenger side. I'm not going to show you the one on the driver's side to make this video easier, but I checked that it's clean. But you have to check these if you have one of these Highlanders, because you just cannot believe how many Highlanders I've seen flood completely because of this funnel. So that is the inspection of the Highlander. The problem with the headlight, we need a new socket, preferably an OEM one, an original one, so we wouldn't have these issues again. The door check needs to be replaced. There's nothing, it's not loose, nothing is damaged otherwise, it just needs a door check. not a safety concern. This, however, the headlight, is a problem. The oil leaks, I mean, if we want to call them that. The front timing cover is leaking. It's not going to stop leaking, but it's not really bad enough where I would say, yeah, let's get this taken care of, or at least clean it and see how bad it progresses. The rear main seal is a joke. There's no leak there at all. The radiator has a very, very small leak. I say my recommendation is to the customer, let's keep an eye on it, see how it goes. We'll top off the coolant. If they want to replace it, that's up to them. The whole car, in general, in my opinion, is in good shape. Folks, this is a 14-year-old car. The rust that you've seen on it, that is typical with these cars. Nothing that I'm too concerned about. I've seen a lot worse. Rarely do I see better, but I've seen a lot worse. So this car overall is in good shape. There are a few things, but the main thing is when you take your car to a mechanic or a technician or whoever is who's a professional working on cars, they need to give you the full picture. They can't hide things from you. The leak is there. I have to tell you about it. Everything else, the rust, the bushing that has a few cracks, I have to tell you about it. But then in the end, I will come and tell you, if I were you, this is the priority list. And at this point in my book, the only thing that is high in priority is that headlight. The headlight keeps burning at night. That is a safety concern. We have wires melting. That is not good. That is really the only thing that's immediate in this car. The door check, the steering shaft is another one I didn't mention. These are not safety concerns. These are annoyances. These are things that bother the driver because you're always going to open the driver's door. You're always going to be turning the wheel. They're annoyances. They're not really safety concerns. And the oil leak, we're going to need to keep an eye on. Same thing with the coolant. Eventually, it's going to get to be a very big leak. Same thing with the coolant. But what is that eventually? 1 month from now or 10 years from now? We're going to have to find out, and I'm going to have to advise this customer. If they want to fix it, I can fix anything you want. But is it a good idea? I'm going to say no in my recommendation because I'd rather you keep an eye on this leak than just dump a whole bunch of money in this and then we have something more immediate all of a sudden happens. This car is in really good shape. It shows that it was maintained well. And one last thing I forgot to show you in our initial inspection, that one independent shop that did not replace the whole tensioner, they just replaced the pulley. They said mass airflow service kit. This is an original Toyota mass airflow. There is, I don't know if they meant they cleaned it or why did they call out the kit? I don't know. But this language used in shops is very important because you said a kit. Was the kit involve new O-ring, new bolts? What was the kit? It's actually just cleaning, but this language is a problem. And last but not least is a wiper situation. This is a standard Highlander issue. We're gonna need to get him a parts list for this because this is also somewhat of a safety concern. You know, you want your wipers to work, especially the back one. So I'll get him an estimate. This can get a little expensive because there's a lot of small parts involved and it does add up. And there's a little bit of labor involved, dangerous labor, that is, you're cutting right next to the glass. And I've done this job a lot. It's not really difficult. If the owner decides to do it, we'll actually film it and show you how it's done. But otherwise, in my opinion, this is definitely a keeper, folks. This car is in great shape. I drove it, actually drives very smooth, very nice. And the little issues that it have, they're nothing for a 14-year-old car with 137,000 miles. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you never find yourself in these situations where you're jumping between dealerships and shops and everybody says something different and you're all confused. It is your car, your decision, your money. Professionals need to give you the full picture. They might make a recommendation, but ultimately, you are the only one that should be deciding whether something needs to be done or not because it's your car, your money, you're the one driving it. Folks, if you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.